IPMNation.com.
Living in a city, when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are thought, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, depending upon when you're listening to this show. This is the fourth episode of Dr. John's Neighborhood, and I continue to be grateful for this opportunity to share some of the things that I know as a psychologist and educator, and just a person who's living a life here in 2018. I'm approaching the age of 50, and the clock is starting to feel like it's ticking. Erik Erikson, a famous psychologist long ago, said that people at different ages were dealing with different, what they call developmental crises, and the developmental crisis for someone my age that I'm feeling is one called generativity versus stagnation. Generativity is the idea that you're leaving something for the next generation. You're contributing to the world in some way, and this can take the form of having children, or being involved in a charity, or being involved in a radio show, hypothetically, or a website like drjohnrich.com. Just doing things with the purpose of leaving behind some kind of legacy. It's been important to me for a long time, but this is part of the reason that I like doing this show and like the idea of continuing to do the show is that I feel like I'm offering something. So hopefully you're feeling the benefit of some of the things that I'm talking about. So I wanted to branch off of last week's conversation when I was talking about my own upbringing in poverty and some of the research that suggests that poverty is a major source of stress for people that can impact almost every area of their functioning. If you're worried about paying your bills or meeting some kind of financial deadline, it makes it more difficult to put attention into positive parenting practices, worrying about staying fit, things like that. There's a guy whose name is Abraham Maslow. You can Google him if you'd like. His last name is spelled Maslow. And Abraham Maslow in the 20th century created something called the hierarchy of needs. And I think that is pretty relevant to that conversation from last week. The hierarchy of needs is depicted often as a pyramid, and the pyramid has 5 levels to it. The idea is that you have to satisfy the needs of one level before you have the mental capacity or for it to even make any sense to focus on the needs above it. So, for example, the bottom level are the basic needs or the physiological needs. These are the needs for food and water and warmth and being able to be well rested, being able to satisfy your body's biological needs to survive. The next level are called the safety needs, which have to do with security and safety. And the one above that has to do with belongingness and love, focusing on your intimate relationships, trying to pay attention to how to have satisfying friendships with other people. So before I do the top 2 tiers or levels, let me just create a scenario to help you make sense of the idea that you have to satisfy the lower level needs before you're going to be talking about the higher level needs, So imagine that you're somebody who doesn't have enough resources to be able to eat every day. And so you're hungry all the time, or you're thirsty, or you're homeless and you're sleeping outside, and here it is January 2018 and you're cold. And somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, how's your love life?" Or, what are you doing to be a better friend? That's a silly question. I hope you agree. The focus that you're going to have at that time is getting something to eat, getting something to drink, getting a warm place to be able to sleep. Focusing on abstract concepts like being a good friend or learning how to be a better communicator with your girlfriend or boyfriend. Those things are not going to be nearly as important as what they call the proximate need that you're struggling with. Now, if you're somebody who has enough food and water and you've got a house, but you live in a very dangerous neighborhood, or you live in a country where you're in the middle of a war, then safety needs are going to be your top concern. And so consequently, the belongingness and love needs are still going to seem kind of irrelevant. It's not going to be where you're going to want to put your attention. If you're lucky enough to satisfy your physiological needs and your safety needs, and you also have some intimate relationships and some quality friendships, the next need above that has to do with esteem. Being able to feel like you're accomplishing something, being able to feel like you have some prestige in the world, or you have a niche that makes you feel proud of yourself. Again, that sense of pride is not going to be a focus if you're hungry, or you feel like you're in danger, or if you're lonely. Loneliness is going to be saturating your every thought, and the idea of accomplishment is going to be far out of reach. And then the top need that Abraham Maslow postulated, he actually said that very few people, in his opinion, have ever reached this level, is a level called self-actualization. Self-actualization is the idea that you're achieving your full potential, that you're able to focus on things like your creativity or connecting yourself to the divine, being able to look at the world and not just love individuals in the world, but having a feeling of a welling up for everybody in humanity and a connection to the earth. So I wanted to talk about those things because it helps to justify why I want to spend a little bit of time talking about money and the kinds of things that I've done in my life to try to make money less of a stressor in my life. I am by no means a wealthy person. I am not trying to suggest that I know everything there is to know about how to handle money issues, but I feel like I'm pretty good. And so I have some things that I've done in my life that I want to share. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the importance of having a budget. So my wife always makes fun of me because I get excited when the budget is balanced and when the budget tells me that I'm going to be able to not only pay for bills but have some extra to go on a vacation or be able to buy myself some new shoes or things like that. So when I first started out my career, the budget was tighter than it is now. As you go along in a career, especially if you're a professional, you find that your money needs are less proximate. But it's been a period of time and a period of analysis of the budget to get me to the place where I am right now. So I feel like a lot of times the reason that people don't want to do a budget is because they're afraid of what the budget might tell them. And I feel like the message that I want to give to you is that your budget is an objective reality. The amount of money that you have coming in versus the amount of money you have going out is out there, even if you don't look at it. There's nothing you can do to change the fact that when the amount of money that you're spending is more than the amount of money you have coming in, you're going to fall deeper into debt and find yourself in the middle of some difficult situations. The more debt you accrue, the harder it's going to be to get credit to help you climb out of that debt. And so, despite the fact that the budget might look like a demon staring back at you if you actually commit it to paper, that budget is a reality that is operating in your life whether or not you take a look at it or not. Whether or not you take a look at it or not. That wasn't a very good sentence. Anyway, so what is a budget? So if I were going to advise you to create a budget, and I've done that for a number of people, probably about 10 in my lifetime, where they gave me the opportunity to look at all their finances and ask some questions about it and try to map out a way to climb out of some kind of hole that they felt like they were in. That is a service that I've provided to other people, and if by chance that's something that you're interested in having me do, I'd be open to talking about that, because I really like budgeting and I really like trying to solve money issues. It's like a puzzle for me. So, if you came to me and said, how do I create a budget? Well, I would start with you writing down all of the money that you have coming in. I'd take a piece of paper or an Excel sheet, but let's forget about Excel right now. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, and then over on the left I would write the word income, and on the right I would write the word expenses. And I begin by talking about the money that you can count on coming in across the year. We'll probably focus on an annual budget. In some cases we might focus on a monthly budget if things were really tight. But for now, let's talk about an annual budget. So over on the left, under income, I would have you say, well, I work this many hours a week, and here are some pay stubs, and after taxes, this is what I make every Friday, or this is what I make every other Friday, whatever it is. And then you take that typical pay stub and you multiply it by the number of pay periods that you're going to receive across a 52-week period. So if you get paid every other week, you take your average check and you multiply it by 26, because there are 52 weeks in a year and you're getting paid every other week, so you divide 52 by 2. If you got paid every week, then I would take that check and multiply it by 52, etc. I'd also ask whether you had any other sources of income. Maybe you get child support, and I would have you write the child support payments down if you can count on them. This isn't supposed to be a pie-in-the-sky picture of your finances. This is supposed to be you facing the facts and truthfully writing down the money that you can count on coming in. Do you have any investment income that comes in? Do you have any rental income? Do you have any money that's coming from like an annuity or a pension or Social Security or whatever other sources of income you might have? And then we take all that and we add it up and we come up with a yearly amount of money that you can afford. Then on the right, what you do is you write down all of the expenses. And so those expenses are going to include things like your rent or your mortgage payment. I'm looking at my budget right now. So I have a mortgage payment, I have my car payment, I have my car insurance payment, I have a certain amount of money for clothes, I have a certain amount of money for going out to eat, I mean, you can put anything in the budget that you want. And if I were advising you on your budget, I would start by having you write down all the things that you would want to write down for the life that you would like to lead. And then, of course, what we're going to do is we're going to add up all these expenses, and if it's more than the amount of money you're bringing in, then we need to figure out ways to make some adjustments. We'll talk about adjustments later. So, I have a membership to the YMCA. That costs me $71.20 a month, and so I put that there and multiply it by 12. I have a line item for going on a vacation. That's not necessarily going out of the country. That includes money that I need to spend for gas to go to Philadelphia sometime if I wanted to hang out there. Anything that I'm doing that's outside of the house for entertainment purposes. If I go to the movie, that comes out of the vacation budget. If I go to a play or I go visit my mother, anything that you can think of is going to come out of that vacation budget. I have an amount of money for utilities. Now, utilities can be a tricky thing because you have to adjust your utility budget to reflect a 12-month period. For example, I have an oil heater in my house, and so in the winter time when it's super cold, I might have to have the oil filled up 2 or 3 times, and each time they come it's going to cost about $800. Well, I'm not going to put in my budget that I'm paying $800 a month for oil, because I'm not paying $800 a month for oil. I'm paying $800 a month for about 4 months, and I'm not paying anything for oil the rest of the time. So you're going to take a look at all of your bills, your utility bills, and you're going to have to go back in time and take a look at the last 12 months and try to figure out how much did you spend last year, and then ask yourself the question, is this about the same as what I'm going to be spending this year? If you are adding up your cell phone bill payments for the past 12 months, but you just added a data plan to your cell phone, then that's not an accurate reflection of the amount of money that you need to set aside to pay your cell phone bill, because the last 12 months don't include the new charges that you just added on to your cell phone plan. If you have cable TV service and you just added HBO, then you can take the last 12 months of payments, but then you also have to add in the extra that you're now paying for the HBO service over and above what you did the last year. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you used to have cable TV and you just dumped it. That's what we did. Actually, just a couple days ago, we used to have cable TV, and I've been waiting for football season to be over because I wanted to watch the Philadelphia Eagles play their season, and I'm delighted that I did it because they just won the Super Bowl. So we just dumped our cable television service, and the reason that I did it is because I still have wireless internet in my house. The bill that I was paying for the wireless internet and the cable was $137 a month, and when I called and asked how much would my bill be if I only had the internet service, it would drop down to $80. So that's a savings of $57 a month. And then I added Netflix and Hulu. Netflix is costing me $8 a month, and the Hulu plan that I got, which is the one without the commercials, is $12 a month. So that's $20 a month. So I'm saving $57 by dropping the cable, but I'm picking up another $20 to get Netflix and Hulu, which I just watch on my computer, and I'm still ahead $37 a month. So if I were going to go back over the past 12 months, it wouldn't be accurate of me to just take the last 12 months of payments that I'm making to Verizon for wireless and cable and call that my budget because I've just changed my budget. Actually, in this case, I've changed it in my favor. So if I've adjusted things so that I'm paying $37 a month less than I was before, then I might take the last 12 months of payments and then I might add all those up and then divide it back by 12 so that I had the average, and then I would take that new number and subtract the $37 a month of savings, and then I would have that amount and I would multiply that by 12, and then that would be that part of my utility budget. So for people who aren't mathematically inclined, I imagine that that's a little bit complicated. But to start off, I would say just go and gather up the information you need to calculate the amount of money you spent last year for all of your utilities. What could those include? Those include your cell phone. If you, for some reason, have a landline, and I don't know why anyone would anymore, but if you have a landline, throw that in. The wireless internet in your house, cable television, your gas, your electric, your water, your sewer, your trash, your oil bill if you have an oil bill. Are there any other utilities that I'm not thinking of? There probably are. But those are the bills that I have to confront, and I take all of those bills over the past 12 months and I add them all together, and then there's my line item for my utilities. I have student loan payments that I have to pay. So I can take the amount of student loan, my monthly payment on my student loan, multiply that by 12, put that in the expense column. I have money that I have to pay for medical care. I'm not talking about the amount that I pay on my paycheck because the income side of my piece of paper includes my take-home pay, and that take-home pay is going to have already deducted the amount that I'm contributing to my medical plan. I'm talking about co-pays, specialist fees, and things like that that I'm going to be accruing throughout the year to take care of my family when we're sick, or take care of hospital visits that might occur, etc. I have a line item here for gifts that includes my typical budget for buying Christmas presents, and then I've also got things in here like my kids get invited to a party at their friend's house and we put some money in an envelope for those gifts. Birthdays, Valentine's Day, if you do anything for Easter, if you do anything for Arbor Day, any of the kinds of events that occur where you're buying gifts for people, that needs to be all calculated. You need to come up with some kind of estimate. I have money in here for gas. I have money in here for going to the store. I have money in here for buying beer or wine that I might want to have at my house. And I also have some line items in here for the four of us in our family. So there's me and my wife and my two kids. So I have some money in there for me. I'm setting aside some money so that if I want to go do something, I've got some money that I'm allowed to spend on whatever I want. I've got some money for my wife, and my wife can use that money to buy whatever she's looking for. I've got money in there for the allowances that I give my two kids. And I take all of that money that I'm hoping to be able to spend, and I add it all up, and then I subtract it from the income that I have coming in. That's how you create a good budget. You gotta be fearless. You gotta be courageous. You can't shy away from it or make up any numbers. Nobody needs to look at this budget. You don't have to try to make it seem like it's better than it is. If you have credit card payments that you have to make because you have a credit card balance, that needs to go on the expense side of things. So don't be scared because you shying away from the objective reality of whether or not you're spending more than you are able to continue to spend before you hit a wall is not going to change the appearance of that wall. So I strongly encourage you to make that budget. And then what I want to talk about next week in this first half hour that I usually take to just pontificate and share wisdom is I want to talk about how you then take a budget that is out of whack or in the red, like the amount of money that you want to spend is more than what you have coming in. How do you adapt that budget? What are some things that I've learned about how you can increase income, decrease expenses, and some thoughts about what you might do if you are lucky enough to have a surplus. I'll be sharing some websites that I use on a regular basis that are pretty helpful in cutting down on how much money I spend on the types of things that I know are going to come up on a routine basis. I'm going to talk a little bit about credit cards and how you can use credit card points to help defray some costs, etc. So I hope this is helpful for people. I have found it to be extremely helpful. At the very least, on a psychological level, doing a budget and then starting to strategize line by line how you make that income side get higher and how you make that expense side get lower. By being courageous enough to make phone calls and investigate, literally line by line, strategies that you can use to make things a little bit more comfortable for yourself so that you can move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and satisfy some of the broader, more satisfying goals that people have as human beings. That's the trick right there. That's the trick. There's always a way if you're willing to make the decisions. So I look forward to next week talking with you a little bit about how to take this budget that you've created and turn it into something more manageable. If you are inclined, let this be your homework assignment. Go get all the information you need between now and next Friday at 6 o'clock when I come back on here to do another show, and have your budget ready to go so that as I talk about looking at it line by line, you might be able to write some notes in the margins of your budget, some to-do items that I can give you about how to try to make things a little bit more manageable. All right, I will talk to you. Well, no, I'm about to sign off, but this is just the first part of the show. When we come back from the break, we're going to be talking to Dr. Joanne Broder, who's actually an old friend of mine, about some of her recent work and how it can apply to people setting goals and breaking them up into concrete steps so that they're more likely to achieve them. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. She's a pretty engaging person and a really smart intellect. So I'll catch you on the other side of the commercial. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
10 years ago, the energy market was deregulated. This opened the market to new suppliers. Ambit Energy is one of those suppliers. Go to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com and see how you can not only get free energy by switching to Ambit, you can also earn travel reward points while lowering your utility bills. Learn more by going to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. Start saving today.
IPM Nation is proud to be sponsored by Uptown Auto Repair, located in Manchester, New Hampshire at 578 Mast Road. Phone number is 603-625-8026. Have you ever heard of a mechanic that guarantees their work? Well, now you have with Uptown Auto Repair, 603-625-8026.
IPMNation.com.
All right, everybody, we're back from our commercial break. I'm excited to introduce an old friend of mine. I haven't talked to her in quite a while. Her name's Dr. Broder. Say hi, Dr. Broder.
Hello.
Yeah. You're supposed to say, hi, Dr. Broder. There, that's right. That's the old joke, right? So Dr. Broder, a.k.a. Joanne, went to Temple with me where we both got our PhD, and we also worked together at the Philadelphia School District. And I'm excited to have her on because she's in the middle of a number of things. She's got one of these lives that has a number of elements to it, and all of them, I think, have some really interesting application just for everyday people who've got a dream or a goal in mind and might have a little bit of difficulty conceptualizing how they might achieve it. So, Dr. Broder, or can I call you Joanne, or you want me to call you
Sure.
Dr. Broder? Okay, so Joanne, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're doing nowadays.
Thank you, John. Well, I teach at St. Joseph's University in the Organization Development and Leadership Program, and I teach students how to do thesis and capstone projects.
Okay,
and the
so like
difference
the final project that they have to do at the end of the degree. Is that what you mean?
Yes, the final project at the end of the degree. And with the difference between a thesis and a capstone, a thesis is more like research for research purposes, where a capstone is a research project, still a research project, but the goal is to take the data and actually use it.
Okay.
So it's done in an organization. Our program, the students are all, they're working professionals and have something at work that they're really interested, a side project that they want to improve a department or a system or a process.
So let me ask you a question. When I talk with my student, I teach undergrads. And whenever I talk with students at the undergrad level about getting a master's degree or a PhD, the main obstacle to their enthusiasm is the thesis or the dissertation. It just seems so overwhelming for them to tackle something that large. And it turns out you have a book to help people do that in a way that's less intimidating, right?
Yes. It's called Finish Your Dissertation, Don't Let It Finish You.
Nice.
And even
Good
though
title.
thank you. And even though the title includes dissertation, it's applicable towards any type of research. Because I always say research is research is research. Whether you're doing a program evaluation, whether you're doing a dissertation, thesis, capstone, or you're doing a consulting project where there's a research element like interviewing people or creating a survey, the rules are the same in terms of quality and best practices.
Okay. So somebody knows that in order to graduate, they need to write a 50 to 75 page thesis, let's say, for their master's program. Let's say they come to you and say, Dr. Broder, I can't do it. It's just every time I sit down and try to write it, I just procrastinate, and it's just really making me anxious because I can't figure out how to get it started. What do you tell them?
Well, I think in that situation, I would say, how in love are you with your topic?
Okay.
Because I think, the first thing is I always encourage people, because, it's so big, and it's kind of like where to begin. I always say, listen to your heart, and meditate, don't obsess. Like, what are you interested in? Where do you want to see yourself? And I always say it should be more than just, the purpose of the study is to be the final, kind of the final activity of this program so I can get out of here. Yes, there's a lot of truth there.
Right.
But also it should work for them, because they're going to be this expert and they can take that data and use it to help people.
And not only that, then when they try to get work, they have a topic about which they can speak intelligently. And that's part of an interview process, at least at the academic level, is being able to demonstrate that you know how to talk about something with the jargon and with the precise language and things like that.
So, yes. So, and I think too, it's you know, they have to, it needs to come from their heart. And I always say it's such a big, daunting project that you're more likely to get it done if it's something you're interested in versus somebody else's topic or a trendy topic or something you think you should do. Or
yeah.
So, you know, you have to think about it. If all of your friends are at the beach and you have to stay in and work on your dissertation, you know, if you really love your topic, it's going to be a lot easier.
Huh. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, you know, I'll do a shameless plug of my own. I have a website. It's drjohnrich.com. And the main impetus for that website was that I had wanted to write a book about parenting for years. I mean, literally like 8 or 9 years. I've had this book in me. And every time I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to start it out, it was very difficult for me to get it going. I would get distracted by something. There was a part of me that was really scared of starting it because I didn't know exactly how to do it. And then somebody that I was talking to said, well, if you start a website, you could write articles that were only, you know, 800, 1,000 words a piece. And eventually you would have enough of those that you could then take them and figure out a way to string them together and add some new content. And that's what happened. So this book is coming out in March or April. So it seems like a similar, like the lesson to it is, first of all, love what you do. But there's an element in what we were talking about before we started recording where a person needs to take something that's large and overwhelming and break it up into smaller bite-sized chunks. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned something about a Post-it note.
Yes. In fact, I was going to say my book, actually your advice was, you said you were given advice that you should start your book with a website. My advice to you would have been, it only takes one word to start writing.
Right, yeah.
So, but my book actually was born on a Post-it note. So it was just a bunch of bullets, a bunch of notes kind of crammed on a Post-it note.
Huh. And was that just like a flash of inspiration you had one day when you were at a restaurant or something?
No, actually, it was notes that I used to teach my class because I taught a research class helping students how to create thesis studies. And I still teach the class, and it was like, well, how can I do this? Because my students, you know, one thing that's my challenge is people, or they don't want to be in that class. They don't want to do that project.
Yeah.
And part of my fun is to getting them excited about it. And part of that is to make it approachable, you know, one step at a time.
Right.
And it's like, if you could start a book on a Post-it note, you know, it's just those few core ideas.
Yeah.
Then I think you can really start anything with just one word or with one thought.
Yeah.
You know, one thing too, a lot of my students, I think when they thought about kind of, as you were saying, starting the book, starting their project. Oh, you know, how am I going to start this project?
Yep.
And I always say, think about it first. Just think about it. Don't write about it. Think about it.
Yeah.
Just meditate on it. And then so when you're thinking about it, and then it's just like you just get some of those thoughts out of your head on paper, and then boom, it started.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess another obstacle for me was that I knew I wanted to write a book about parenting. I knew a lot about how to parent in a way that made it more likely that your kids would be confident and more likely to succeed. But exactly what is going to be the theme of the book, that was a lot more vague. And for me, one of the great things about the website is that I didn't have to have an overarching theme. I could just write an article about self-esteem. I could write an article about discipline. I could write an article about teaching your kids your values and stuff like that. And once I got it going, it started to take on a life almost. It was a creative process that was actually pretty enjoyable.
Great. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
You know, when you have this goal that comes from your heart, obviously it was important to you.
Right. It was important to me, but I didn't quite know what the spine of the idea was.
I think with any goal, especially a book, there's a lot of inward reflection. Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Who am I doing this for?
Right. Yeah.
What am I trying to say?
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure we did, so we're already a third of the way through the interview, believe it or not.
Oh my.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure we did was to talk to listeners out there who don't have any thesis or dissertation or book on the horizon. That's not their goal. Just like everyday people who have a dream in mind, but they just can't conceptualize how to make the dream a reality, or when they think about the dream, it's just so vague and overwhelming that they can't just get themselves to the place to get it started. So let's talk about a friend of mine. This is a friend who is a server at a restaurant nearby, and she actually has in mind to create a business. It's a combination of an arcade and a bar for adults, which I think is a pretty interesting idea. But when you talk to her about getting that started, like, she's been thinking about this for a couple years now and has no idea at all how to go about making that actually happen. So let's say she's paying you as a consultant to think that through. What are some of the questions that you would have for her?
I would ask her to really hone in and visualize on it.
Okay.
Just like, meaning really make it real, like specific in her head. Almost like, you know, where is this bar?
Uh-huh.
Where do you imagine it being? You know, at the beach, in the city, in a strip mall, in the suburbs,
Right.
in a freestanding building somewhere. So kind of, and sort of like, and also for herself, think about if she was going to this bar. If she was going to a really cool bar, like, wow, a really cool bar arcade, what would it look like?
Right.
Because sometimes when we say, like, oh, we have to start this and we have to do this, we put pressure on ourselves. And I think in the beginning, when you're really dreaming and brainstorming, that's when you have to relax and give yourself permission to think big, even if it feels really daunting.
Huh. So turning something vague into an actual image, and then at what point do you go from the visualization to the smaller chunks? Like, what are some of the smaller chunks that would come about once you were able to picture what it looked like?
Well, I think, okay, so let's say they have this clear picture of this place, right?
Yeah.
And then you take a step back and say, okay, what do I need for that? Okay, we have this amazing idea. What do we need for this?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so, you know, we need money.
Right.
We need a location.
Yeah.
We need people who might believe, you know, buy into the idea, that might support the idea, might believe in us.
Right.
Maybe people who are in the restaurant business, and talk to people.
Right, just going around and talking about the idea.
And talking to people, like, what do you think of this?
Uh-huh.
And be open. I mean, you might have this idea, and you might have this, you know, it might be your dream, but let's say you talk to 20 people who give you some really sound advice that really know the business.
Yeah. So they might say, well, I would ditch this idea, but I think that there's a real market for this other idea.
Or you know, this idea let's say, in a city never works because there's too many other things to do.
Uh-huh. Okay,
like
good.
There's too many cultural events. Maybe like this idea, maybe, you know, 20 people might say that would be so great in more of a suburban area.
Yeah. So let's liken this to, you talked before about, like, if you wanted to remodel your kitchen. Let's say that you walk in your kitchen one day and you said, you know what, I've had enough. I've been looking at this kitchen, and every time I look at it, I'm dissatisfied. it's time to do a new kitchen. How do you take that big concept of remodeling the kitchen and turning that into smaller chunks? Let's talk about that as an analogy.
Well, okay, so you're looking at this kitchen and saying, okay, well, what is it really? What do we really want to change here? What's the need?
Uh-huh.
Is it the appearance? Is it the appliances? Is it, you might look at the kitchen and say, you know what, it might just need a coat of paint.
Uh-huh.
But if you really looked at it and said, oh, okay, it really needs to be regutted from top to bottom, I would break it down into different categories.
Right.
Thinking about what do we want it to look like?
Right. So what are the dimensions and what function is it going to have and things like that?
Right. Like what function is it? Like what do you envision it being? It's like, is it, white and airy? Is it colorful? Yeah.
It almost reminds me of the work that you and I used to do in Philadelphia where we did program evaluation. You're coming up, you have this idea for a program that, let's say, might help kids learn science better. And so you start with the bigger goal and then you work your way backwards to the details.
Right. Like, how can I make this happen? What do we need?
Great. So I'm thinking of another, let's do one more example before we move on to talking about some of the interesting things you're doing about kids and teenagers and their technology. So let's say I'm thinking of a guy that's at my school, and he talks about how he wants to have more dates. He wants to get more dates with women, but he's shy and he doesn't quite know how to approach them, and it's all just very intimidating. Even if he goes somewhere where he might have an opportunity, he talks himself out of it. So how do we apply the idea of the goal being getting more dates and breaking that down to something akin to a lit review or concrete steps that this person could take to get him closer to his goal?
I think he would have to take a step back and say, what's going on here? Why am I not feeling like I can approach people and ask them out?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's might be almost for this person like he needs to take a look at people who don't have any problem asking women out and watch what they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe also think about within himself, like, what am I afraid of? Why can't I do this? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? She says no.
Right. Yeah, you're going to end up in the same spot, I guess, except that you're going to have to deal with the rejection and what that rejection might mean. So
what the rejection could mean, and how to and maybe how to get over it, and maybe how to almost, I don't want to say anticipate it because I don't want to sound pessimistic. I wouldn't want to give this person I wouldn't want to fill this person with any type of pessimism.
Right.
But make him realize that realistically, not everybody he sets his sights on will be interested, and that's okay.
Yeah. And
it's nothing personal.
Right. Yeah, well, that's difficult to do if you're already feeling self-conscious or a lack of confidence. Then it's hard not to take it personally, I imagine.
And I think he also needs to just also look within and what does he need to be more confident.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what about you? So what are your goals for your life or for your career? Like, have you reached your goal? Have you achieved it? Like, here you are, you're like the head of a journal, you've got a book that's already out, you've got another book coming. When you look at your life right now, are you saying, I did it, I made it where I want to be, time to coast?
No, because I think I'd get really bored.
Okay.
Me personally, I think I'd get really bored. I think my goal is to help people, and I like seeing people be the best they can be.
Right.
On whatever level.
So do you have anything that
and
you're...
help them when they're not being their best.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you're working on right now to try to improve yourself in the classroom or get a little bit closer to the life that you envision where you're helping people even more than you're currently doing?
Yes. Well, last year I had the honor and privilege of being the president for the Society for Media Psychology and Technology of the American Psychological Association.
Yeah.
And my presidential initiative was a hot topic for me, which I'm calling it device management and intelligence.
Okay.
And that's basically developing a healthier relationship with technology, as well as kind of thinking and screening what kind of information we put out there about ourselves.
Okay.
Before we put it out there.
That sounds like it's pretty applicable to anybody who has kids.
And themselves, too.
Right.
Because I know, a lot of people complain about, kids and their technology use. But have you ever been to some sort of program at a school?
Uh-huh. Like
or
what?
Or a soccer, or a kid's athletic event? How many parents are completely paying attention to the game without playing with their phone?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or only using their phone, let's say, to take pictures or videos.
Uh-huh.
Who are not using their phone to communicate in the middle of wherever they are.
Yeah. I mean, that's difficult. I've noticed myself that I could be outside on a perfectly lovely day and I'm scrolling through some bullshit on my phone that I could look at after I got inside and totally missing what the beautiful temperature or just, what's the trees that I'm passing and things like that.
Well, I think one thing with tech, it's interesting because it's like we have our technology, our devices. It's like we're walking around with computers in the palms of our hands 24/7.
Yeah.
And there's so much on it. There's so much on it. Think about it. On another side, yes, you could be out there enjoying nature around you, but also maybe you're just reading for leisure and you're saying, I'm outside, I'm kicking back, and I'm doing something that I also enjoy. Yeah.
I read something not too long ago that was talking about the apps that we have on our phone or on our computer, and that one of the reasons that they can be so addictive is that there's no end to the scrolling. So they talked about how in a book you can be reading and then you get to the end of the chapter, and the chapter is like a natural place for you to decide, do I want to spend more time reading, or is this a good place to put a bookmark in and walk away? But when you're on Facebook, you could literally scroll for the rest of your life, and it would just keep going and going.
Scroll until last year, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of dangerous. So talk to the parents who might be listening about what you know in terms of healthier relationships with technology. What kinds of advice or tips would you give them?
Well, especially for kids, if they're maintaining a healthier relationship with technology, they will sleep better, they will be less anxious, and they will feel more confident.
Okay. So why is that? Why does technology produce all of those negative outcomes if they have an unhealthy relationship?
Well, one, let's say if they have their phones in their bedrooms and they're trying to sleep, and they're getting, dings and dongs all night.
Right.
Whether they respond to it or not. The fact that they're getting those sounds.
Yeah, right. It's waking them up.
So that in itself, they're getting interrupted.
Yeah.
And, where an adult might have a little bit more awareness or just have a little bit more patience and say, you know what, it can wait till tomorrow. A kid, they don't want to miss out.
Right. Don't want to miss out. That's good. Well said.
So it's harder to control that impulse.
So the one question that's out there is what is a healthy relationship with technology? What do you mean by that?
It's going to vary for everybody depending on their lives and what they use it for.
Uh-huh.
But realizing that there's a time and a place for everything.
Okay.
And not letting it consume you. Like one time, it's funny, I was talking to a friend, colleague about this work about a year or two ago, and she said, "What do you mean?" And we were in a restaurant, and I said, "Look around." I said, "How many people have their phones out?"
Yeah, right.
While they're eating. I said, "You and I are among the few people who do not have a phone sitting on the table."
Yeah, married couples even, they're out to dinner by themselves, and they're both looking at their phones instead of talking to one another.
And that also, so that also talks about relationship quality.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that we talk about is kind of being an absent present, like you're there physically.
Yeah.
But if you're on their phone, how present are you?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's amazing because when you and I were young, there was nothing like this, right? If you wanted a phone call, you had to stand in the kitchen by the phone that was attached to the wall that had a cord on it. And if you weren't there, you might miss the call. And
not only that, but think about it. When TV came out and radio came out, it wasn't 24/7.
Uh-huh.
Programming was between specific hours.
Right. And if you wanted to know something, like, I wonder what's the capital of blah, 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 and then you had to, make time to go somewhere where that information was around instead of pull out your phone and get the easy answer. But
you could wait.
You could wait.
And you could wait.
Right.
Like I've been in. I'm sure we've all been in social situations for people where somebody asks that question just randomly. I wonder what. Here, hold on, I'll tell you. And
right.
They pull up the information immediately.
Yeah.
Can we wait till we're done?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting and difficult. I'm sure for a lot of people, it's difficult to resist the urge to be on the device, and because a lot of adults, they don't want to miss out either.
Right, and they don't want to miss out, and also adults, we're trying to teach our kids not to cyberbully. We're trying to teach our kids to kind of make smart choices in what we post and how we comment to posts. But a lot of adults aren't really thinking through.
Yeah.
Before they post, because from the perspective of safety, from the perspective of managing your brand.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If you were highly opinionated about something, and if you were, let's say you had a business in your community. And
then somebody looks you up and
and says, "Oh, this is how this person feels about, this cause."
Right. Or
which might be really irrelevant to your business. Probably has nothing to do with whether or not you're able to deliver the goods in your business.
Right.
But the fact that you might put people off.
Yeah. Right. You're perfectly well at running your packaging store, but you've made these homophobic comments in the past, and
yes,
it can come back to bite you. Interesting.
So I think personally it would turn anybody off.
Yeah. Well, so I hate to say it, but we're actually almost out of time, and so I want to give you an opportunity to either tell us about something that people might want to know, a website that you have, or a product or a service that's upcoming or something, and then maybe like a last word or two of advice for people based on what we've discussed.
Great. Well, my website is JoanneBroderSummerson.com, and there's information about my book, Finish Your Dissertation, Don't Let It Finish You, as well as all types of research consulting, also kind of everything that Dr. John and I talked about, the journal, it's all the information's there. But anything that you're working on, whether it's a dissertation or any goal, always, I think, believe in yourself, start small, realize it's not going to happen overnight, realize with anything there's barriers and frustrations, but that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I mean, when you start small, you are moving in the right direction, and those small bits sometimes actually change what you thought the goal was. It can change as you start to process things and think about it.
And to keep moving. Like you said, kind of to build on what you just said, to keep, to start moving, just to keep moving.
Right.
It's really easy, even if you're thinking about it. Even if you're thinking about it, but you're not doing anything, you're still moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. I like it. I like it. Well, listen, Joanne, I'm real grateful that you gave me your time, and glad that we're back in touch. It's been a lot of years since we've talked. Our lives have gone in different directions, and yet they haven't gone in different directions, strangely. So I appreciate the time and all the words of advice that you gave us, and I'll be talking to you later, I'm sure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
This was a lot of fun.
Good.
And it's been so great to reconnect with you, but I always felt like our friendship was timeless anyway.
Timeless.
So
there we go.
So
thanks, Joanne.
Thank you. Talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Living in a city, when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are felt, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right. See, she never wanna be a...
IPMNation.com